Using old film cameras can be absolutely great fun, but there's a few things you have to be aware before you get started. Now first off, it's worth explaining that I'm a user of film cameras. I don't have them as ornaments, I'm not a collector. So all the cameras I'm going to show you are things I tend to use on a regular basis. But there are a few areas you really need to watch out for if you're getting into film photography, especially if you're going to use older film cameras. Now the first and most obvious thing to mention with old cameras is that they are likely to fail from time to time. They are going to be unreliable at certain points in their life. They're not as young as they used to be. So I can only say that if you're going out and shooting with film cameras seriously, you may consider the fact that they will fail and make a compensation for that by taking more than one film body with you or more than one lens. Typically, if I'm going out with my Nikons, I take two Nikons, Nikon FEs, FE2s, FMs. I have two of each type and I will use them interchangeably on a shoot. Make sure they get a bit of use so they're regularly working their shutters and their wind-on mechanism. So first off, don't rely entirely on just one film camera body or lens system. Now it's also worth mentioning that if you're going to go out with a film camera that you've just purchased, then give it a test run first. Put a couple of rolls of film through it. Don't go out and expect it to work just because the shutter sounds fine or because that lens feels like it's stopping down properly. Run a roll of film through it. It may cost you sort of £5 or £10, but it's well worth it in the long run. Don't risk anything on an untested camera. It may be the shot of a lifetime. And also, when you're out shooting, and I've done this on many trips, if you are uncertain about a particular camera, then take the scene with another camera, preferably and ideally the same model or make of camera, an interchangeable camera like a 6x6. Change the back and shoot on different backs so you have more than one copy of that image, because if it's a once in a lifetime trip to a remote location and it comes out blank or it's got light leaks, that's ruined, and the cost of an extra back and an extra roll of film isn't that significant. So what sort of things tend to go wrong with older cameras and lenses? Well, if we start with lenses, older style lenses like this lovely large format lens here, then the shutters typically will start to degrade over time and they'll become sluggish. Now this is an old Kodak 127mm lens I have lying around, and I've set it to 1 second. Now if you just listen, that's more than 1 second, it's probably about 3 or 4 seconds. Now that's absolutely typical of what happens with old mechanical camera lenses. The shutter speeds at the slow end become even slower and unusable, and in the end you're not relying on them for anything other than really sort of negative films which can compensate for that with their generous latitude. So you'll probably need to consider getting them serviced before you use them. Now the next thing to think about, especially with older cameras like this, are the bellows and also the focusing mechanism. Now I think you can see on this one that the whole front of the camera and shutter is turning. It's absolutely useless as it is at the moment. Only the lens is supposed to turn. And also these bellows on this camera are probably about 80 years old, 70 or 80 years old, and they tend to suffer with light leaks. So one bit of advice you will typically hear is that people will say to you, if you've got a suspect camera, if you get the opportunity, then try and put a torch into the back and shine a light through it. Now, if you manage to get the opportunity to test one of these before you buy it, yes, definitely. Sort of get in the a darker room, put a torch in and see if you can see any pinholes of light coming out through the bellows. You'd be surprised, even the best looking bellows can have small holes in them because these materials are pretty ancient now. It's old leather. Some fare better than others, some have still lasted quite well like Zeiss folders. But yeah, just be wary. And also these little lens elements on the front with a lot of old cameras, they are called cell focusing. And the problem with that is it gets gummed up and it won't turn anymore. If you turn it too much, look what happens. The whole lens mechanism starts to move with the shutter and it's useless at the moment. Now something else worth watching out for in the back of cameras is the take-up mechanism, the wind-on. Now the wind-on might be stuck, it might be stiff. And also on the back of the camera, like these rails here, you may have wear and tear, slight rough edges which can mark your film. Now believe it or not, even my Holger, which I use regularly, is currently scratching film. I've had it on a couple of films. It's very annoying. I've smoothed down all the surfaces and the whole thing's plastic. And it's still marking the film, so I haven't got to the bottom of that. So that's making it difficult for me to use the Holger at the moment. So give it a good visual examination if you get the chance. Now the next area to watch out for is the availability of spares for the camera you're buying. Now, if you're getting something like one of these old mechanical nickel mats, then there's still plenty of them around, so it's relatively easy to get people to fix them. And because they've got no batteries, it's not as complex as something electronic. However, there are certain cameras out there, not just cameras, things like film scanners, where there are no parts available anymore. I mean, they dried up years ago, and you're told if you buy it and it goes wrong, effectively it's dead and the money's gone. So I'm always very keen on cameras I can buy more than one copy of, or are still relatively straightforward to fix. Again, I'll go back to my Nikons, the Nikon FEs and FE2s. I had these serviced last year, and the repairman said he could still get the parts for them, and there's still plenty of spare bodies around. And I would advise as well that you do consider investing in a spare body, especially if it's not a particularly expensive camera. My Bronica SQ system, I have not only one spare body, which is currently playing up, but I bought another donor body off eBay for £50. I don't know what condition it's in. And they're away at the moment with the repairman to try and make one good body out of. So I would never risk just taking one camera body on any particular trip, especially if I'm going a long way. Now, the last thing as well to consider with spare parts is batteries. Now, if you have an early electronic camera, probably from the 60s and 70s, a lot of them use mercury cells, which you can't obtain nowadays. There are some replacements which are similar. Some of them have slightly different voltages, so they'll give different meter readings or different shutter speeds. And there are conversions for other old cameras too. So research carefully before you buy an old camera with electronics, just in case you can't get a battery for it. Now, which cameras would you go for if you're looking to get into film photography and you don't want too much hassle or too many problems with spare parts? Well, I'll say it again, I like Nikon film cameras. I mean, this is a 45-year-old Nikon mat. There's loads of them on the internet and they're very, very reliable. So I like the Nikon film system. I also think certain designs of camera are more robust than others. I've got my Minolta Auto Cord here, twin lens reflex. Now that design is very robust generally. The Rolleiflexes, the Rolleicords, the Yashica mats, they're very simple but very durable. They can take a lot of knocks and still keep functioning. So they're a good investment. If you can get one that works, it'll probably keep working for many years. There are, however, some designs which are fraught with problems, and I'll bring this poor little demo up again of an old 645 folder. Now, I have bought and disposed of and sold dozens of folders over the years, and they are by far the worst in terms of reliability and condition. They have very fragile mechanisms. They're front cell focusing. The shutters are generally quite exposed. The bellows get holes in them. The opening and closing, this one won't even close because it's a bit twisted and bent. So you are really taking a bit of a gamble if you buy old folders. So I would recommend highly that you invest in one which is working and guaranteed. Or if you just want to play about, yes, get an old one, but don't expect too much. It's obvious as well to say that the likes of Hasselblads and Leicas are still very well supported. The major repair shops and even the small independents can still fix them. There are so many parts for them. There's so much knowledge out there that you can't really go wrong. Apart from the fact it's going to cost you an arm and a leg these days to get into a decent Leica or Hasselblad system. And I'll finally end by saying in this section that the mechanical cameras generally are a better bet as they get older because there are no electronics. The FE here, probably about 40, 45 years old. This one's older, but this one will be easy to repair because once the electronics go in, there's the little circuit boards that do the aperture priority and the shutter timing. You're pretty much on your own, unfortunately. So if you're going to go and buy old film cameras, what would I advise in terms of things to look out for? Well, I would say first and foremost, try and get a good one. It's cheaper in the long run. It's a lot cheaper to get one which is fully serviced, fully working from a reputable camera dealer or a reputable seller on eBay with a good reputation. Because getting these things fixed can be more expensive than the actual camera itself. You could just be buying a money pit. As you can with old houses and old cars, you're better off buying one which is in decent condition to start with very often. So yes, go for the dealers if you can. The dealers who give honest opinions and descriptions of what the camera is like, and they say whether it's been tested or cleaned. Be very wary of eBay. I mean, obviously I don't need to tell you this, but be very wary of eBay. Now, there are some common phrases you'll see to describe old film cameras, and I'll give you a few here. The first one is, I don't know very much about cameras, and I'm selling this for my family, my friend, my late father's. It all looks to be working fine, but I'm no expert sold as seen. Well, run a mile from that one. You'll also hear people describe things as in excellent condition. It's got a great body on it, and the bellows are fine. They won't mention the lens, and also all the images they show of the camera have the lens turned away, or it's a bit shaded, or they haven't really zoomed in on that particular part of the camera. And I always tend to ask those sellers, can you tell me about the lens? And they either don't answer, or they actually admit that there are problems with that lens on there. There is fungus, there is separation of the elements, there are scratches, there are peeling of any coatings on there. Be very wary of eBay. Now, I would have said up to a year ago, your best bet is to go for one of the Japanese sellers, because I'd had 100% reliability from them in the past. But I did buy 2 lenses and a body last year from a couple of different sellers, and they were plagued with problems, and they were just Nikons, nothing exotic. 2 of the lenses had serious problems with the barrels being loose, the helicoils, and one of the bodies, it didn't actually work, despite it being described as mint minus. So I had to get them fixed at my local repair shop, and I got some refund from those sellers. So generally beware, but I'd have to say overall the Japanese sellers on eBay, a good one, are a very safe bet. They really look after their cameras in Japan. They really do treasure them, and some of the best equipment I've ever got has come from Japan. Yeah, and I'd say the last thing to be very wary of is folders. Folders, 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 folders. Buyer beware. Pay a bit more for a good folder. You can pick something like this up for £50 and it doesn't work, or £30. Or you could pay about £150 or £200 and get a very good one. If you pay about £400 or £500 for some of the more expensive models, the sort of Super Icontas and the Isolettes, and the sort of the more premium marks, shall we say, like the Mamiya's, then it's probably going to last you a long time, but it ain't going to be cheap. It's going to be quite a bit more expensive than the junk you normally find on eBay. So finally, what should you do if you want to get into film photography, but you want to ensure you keep your fleet of cameras in a tip-top condition, or if you have a problem, you can get it sorted? Well, I would say find yourself a reputable repairman, somebody who's got a good name, and try them out. Now, I use a company in Liverpool. Now, I'm not associated or affiliated in any way whatsoever. I just use them. I have used them for about 15 years now. They're called Newton Ellis, and they've been around for a long, long time. Now, they have repaired and serviced my Hasselblads. They've repaired and serviced lenses far older than this. They fixed a 10cm Dagor from 1934. Another repairman said, couldn't be fixed anymore. I'm sorry, it's just the way it is. They fixed it. They've just got my Minolta Auto cord back from them, and the B setting wasn't working, and it's been fixed and serviced, and it's perfect now. Not cheap, £150 to get it fixed and serviced, but it's such an immaculate camera that you can buy a dodgy one for £300. So if you can get a really, really clean one and get it serviced, it's probably a better bet. Now, once you know you've got a good repairman, you know then that it's worth buying a piece of equipment that potentially will have problems. A clean may cost you £50, £60 if there's nothing else needed. Clean and adjust of the focus. Repairs, it depends. I mean, I spent about £400 or £500 last year getting a bunch of lenses and bodies repaired, but they're all good as new, so that is worth it to me. So try and get yourself a decent repairman. I can only say vouch for the one I use in the UK. I've tried a couple of others in the UK, and they didn't fix things properly. So yes, well, what can I say then about old film cameras? Beware the perils of old film cameras and running them for genuine day-to-day shooters. It can be great fun. Don't rely on them totally. Even the newest film camera now is probably about 18 to 20 years old, realistically. A lot of mine are 60 to 70 years old, and some of the lenses are getting on for 90 years old. So you will need to be very careful in how you use them. Take a backup with you. Don't rely on them totally. Give them a regular running and a regular servicing. I tend to go around my little lens collection every so often, the mechanical lenses, and I just trip the shutters, so it keeps me in fine fettle. If you keep doing that, by the way, on a lot of lenses, it'll gradually improve the shutter mechanism because the springs get a bit sticky, a bit tired in the aperture blade. So keep them used, keep taking them out, and don't just use them as ornaments, and have great fun. So yes, I hope this video was useful for you, anyone considering getting into it. You'll see me out with these cameras pretty soon, so thanks for coming along, and thanks for watching.